Why is it that you seem to choose the wrong person in romantic relationships over and over? Why is it that you choose the bad boy? Or why is it that you choose the person that is emotionally unavailable? Or the one that pushes and pulls back and forth, that's in your life, that's out of your life, that loves you and love bombs and pulls away? Why is it that you keep on being attracted to these type of people? Today I'm going to talk about why you tend to do this. Why is it that it just seems so familiar to be doing this over and over? I'm going to talk about why this happens to you psychologically, and I'm going to talk about why this happens to you spiritually as well. And I'm going to show you what you can do to start changing this pattern in your life. Hello, I'm Dr. Brian Clemmons, and the first thing I want to share with you is that your choices are not random. It's not accidental. It's a pattern. A lot of people are looking for love in all the wrong places, as the song says. Why is it that you choose people who just can't seem to commit? They don't seem loyal, or they're very intense sometimes in their emotions, and at other times they withdraw. Sometimes you might be drawn to somebody who isn't emotionally attuned at all. They're disconnected from their emotions. And you may be wondering, why is it that I continue to choose this kind of person that's either not there, not connected with me, not reliable, and why do they pull away? Part of the reason that this is happening is because your nervous system, part of your system that is wired for survival, is drawn to what your system knows. And you can choose what's familiar to you. When you were growing up, your system may have been familiar with rejection, disconnection, inconsistency. Maybe you had to earn your parents' love, or maybe you grew up with an alcoholic or somebody, maybe you grew up with a parent who was narcissistic. Your system learns to adapt to that. You learn to people please sometimes and be so familiar with what everybody else is feeling and what they need. And that may have been your role growing up. That's what your system knows. A lot of people that I talk to are used to dealing with problems internally on their own. And they never received the nurturing that they needed with their emotional experiences. For example, where the parents put into them and said, "What's going on with you? What are you feeling? How are you doing today?" They may have grown up where the parent was very rejecting or perfectionistic or demanding. The love you may have experienced was inconsistent and perhaps always oriented around what the parents need rather than inputting into you and what you need. And so when you meet somebody who's emotionally unavailable, that may be a familiar thing to you, familiar pattern. The second reason you may be struggling with picking the wrong person is because there's a trauma bond loop. Emotionally unavailable people often contribute to a trauma bond loop. And here's what it looks like. They give you just enough attention to pull you in, and then they withdraw from you, and you're not sure why. You may feel anxious and confused and rejected and uncertain. And then just at the right time, they come back. They reassure you that everything's okay and that they're the one for you and love bomb you. It's an absolute emotional roller coaster. It's up and down. And anytime you're in a relationship where it seems chaotic and like a roller coaster, you should see that as a big red flag. If they're overly emotional, excessively needy, they pout, and a lot of child modes come out of them. What ends up happening is the intensity that goes with the roller coaster is associated with love. You get these high dopamine surges, and then it crashes and goes down, and then it goes up again and it goes down. And your brain starts to value that as being more important than it actually is. And it's not love, it's your body activating in response to what it has known in the past. And so your body starts associating intensity, intense emotions with connection, when in actuality, that's not what it is. It's not chemistry, it's more of a trauma bond. In fact, if it's normal and it seems boring, your brain may view it as a lack of chemistry or something like that, when in actuality, you're failing to see the actual things that you need to know in order to decide whether or not you want to be with this person, like getting to know them, seeing their character. And truly understanding who they are. But instead, it's this push pull back and forth, and it's very unhealthy. On a spiritual level, let's talk about how this can confuse you spiritually. You may confuse your longing with God's calling. And if you're having these deep, intense emotions, that's not necessarily God calling you to this individual. In fact, if you're experiencing these emotions really early on in a relationship and it's chaotic and there's these overly long, drawn out conversations that don't have a lot to do with anything substantial, if it's all about appeasing or pleasing or fawning, that's something that's come out in terms of codependency patterns. A fawning pattern is a reaction to somebody out of trauma, in fearing that they're going to leave, fearing that they're going to be upset, and these types of things. That's not from God. God has given us a spirit not of fear, but of love, of power, and a sound mind. If you're feeling this chaos and this internal lack of peace, this is not from God. You really want to pay attention to that. God's design for love isn't confusion. You're going to find steadiness. You're going to find consistency. There's going to be peace. There's going to be truth and comfort in the relationship. So don't attach with chaos. That's not from God. That's not a calling. That's your body giving you a false signal that there's chemistry when there's not. So why do you stay? Let's talk about that. Years ago, when I first started doing counseling, many years ago, 25 to 30 years ago, I remember meeting women who would come into my office and they would share with me that their boyfriend or their husband was cheating on them, mistreating them, maybe even abusing them, and was in and out of their relationship over and over. And I remember as a young therapist back then, I remember thinking, why don't you just leave? Why are you staying in this? That's the most logical, obvious answer. One of the reasons they stayed, as I've said before, it's what their body knows. And on a psychological level, they're seeking to maintain something that they already know about themselves. For example, if they've been abandoned as a kid, they're likely to choose somebody who is unreliable and probably will abandon them. or if they've experienced some sort of rejection or abuse, they may feel defective and they may seek to maintain this sense of what they already feel about themselves. Have you ever given a compliment to, let's say it's a friend of yours and they're very attractive and they look great and they simply just can't accept the compliment? And the reason they can't accept it, the reason they don't want to, is often there's something deeper going on where they feel unattractive, they feel ugly in some way, they feel defective in some way. And if they accept a compliment, it may go against the deceptive message that they already feel about themselves. And in psychology, they call this a maintenance mode or a freeze mode. So you have fight, flight, or freeze. And sometimes it's almost easier to freeze in those aspects. Sometimes it's easier to perpetuate what you already feel about yourself by choosing the wrong relationship. And sometimes you're trying to find the relationship that will somehow meet that need and make you feel worthy, make you feel valuable. There's these if onlys. If only they do this, then I'll feel complete. It's going to be so wonderful. It just doesn't work that way. No human being is ever going to fully meet all of your needs like that. And there's a God-shaped void in all of us where we need something more than an individual's imperfect love. It's a great thing to have love, but it's not that agape love that the Greeks referred to as like a transcendent love that really comes from God himself. There's a void within us. With every human being, there's a void that we need to be filled, and it can only be filled by God. He can really only meet that deep need. A human being will never meet that. So how do we break the cycle now? How do you break the cycle? The first thing and the hardest thing is to start noticing it, to be able to step back from what you're doing, see it for what it is, take off your rose-colored glasses that you may have on and reflect. And getting some friends involved in this that you really trust, that aren't, and getting some friends, some really close family members that you trust. Get a good therapist where you can go through some of what's going on in the relationship so you can objectively view it. That's going to be essential, is to notice it and then to start identifying any destructive or toxic behaviors that are going on in that relationship. There's a great book called Safe People that goes over characteristics in ourselves and in others that we really want to be careful of, that we want to avoid. For example, if somebody says they're going to do something, but they don't do it, or they can't take feedback, or if they can't take feedback from other people, they get very defensive. That could be a problem. If they're really religious on the outside and they pretend that they're super Christian or something like that, but behind the scenes, you see something different. There's something that's unsafe about that individual. They're a pretender. They're a chameleon, probably. So it's these types of things that you really want to look for, become very educated about. Another thing is to understand your own personal triggers. What is it that you're triggered by? Are you triggered by a fear that they're going to leave? Are you triggered by their anger, that you might make them angry? Are you triggered by the fact that you feel like you might never receive love again, that there's nobody else that will give you love? Is that a trigger? Really reflect on those triggers. Ultimately, you want to invite God into your dating life and into your healing process. Invite him into it and pray that he will direct you, that he'll show you these toxic signs and show you that he is the one that can ultimately bring the deep agape love that you need. Your identity has to rest in God alone. It can't be put in the hands of an individual to make you valuable, to give you worth, to make you enough. No human being will ever do that. So when you invite God into your healing process and you spend time with Him, that's going to help you spot these things much better. And in this process, be open to a person who isn't drama, who's different than what you know. Maybe they seem boring to you, but that's normal. Without all the drama, that could seem boring to you. But you need normal, you need steady, you need safety, you need predictability. And you may not have gotten that in childhood, but you need relationships that are consistent and good character qualities. And yes, you can still have lots of fun in a relationship. That's very important and key, but you're able to work through issues and you're able to work through issues and you're not in a state of hyper arousal. You're anxious and angry and all emotional. And you're also not shutting down as if you're in a dangerous situation or something like that. But you're able to stay in a window of tolerance together. You're able to work through issues. Healthy love might feel slower and not quite as intense, but that's good. You want a gap of time to get to know them. One of the most important things is that you're talking, you're getting to know that person in all kinds of different situations. And there's just a lot of interacting and talking at a vulnerable level, at a deep level over time. So if it's too fast and too quick and too intense, watch out for that. And let me close with this. If you feel like you're not enough and you'll never find the right one or you're worthless, let me just tell you that is absolutely not true. Your body is sending you some false signals. You need to be aware of unsafe people and you need to find more time with God and with other people in your life that can give you feedback and help you grow in this process. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe and check out my next video. Thank you. Look forward to seeing you next time.